Hi, my name is Wayne Dyer.
There are moments in a human life when the soul begins to whisper something that the mind cannot fully understand yet. A quiet stirring, a subtle knowing, a gentle nudge from somewhere beyond the noise of everyday thought. It is as if the universe itself leans close and says, "Prepare yourself. Something extraordinary is unfolding." Most people spend their lives looking outward for blessings. They look toward circumstances, toward other people, toward achievements, toward money, recognition, approval. They believe blessings arrive as rewards from the external world. But what I want to share with you today is something that may completely transform the way you see your life. The blessings that are about to blow your mind are not coming from the outside. They are emerging from the infinite presence within you. You see, every human being is born carrying a divine identity that cannot be damaged, diminished, or destroyed. Long before you were given a name, before you were assigned a nationality, a religion, a job title, or a list of expectations, you existed as a spiritual being connected to the intelligence that created galaxies. That intelligence did not suddenly stop when it created you. It continues to move through you. And when you begin to remember that truth, when you begin to align your thoughts with that divine intelligence, you step into a flow of life where blessings appear in ways that defy logic. But here is the paradox. Most people block their blessings without even realizing it. They block them with doubt. They block them with resentment. They block them with fear. They block them with the belief that they are somehow unworthy of miracles. And so they spend years asking God for abundance while simultaneously believing they do not deserve it. Imagine planting seeds in a garden while constantly digging them up to check if they are growing. That is what doubt does. It interrupts the natural intelligence of creation. The universe responds not only to your words, but to the vibration of what you truly believe about yourself. If deep within you there is a quiet belief that life is difficult, that opportunities belong to other people, that blessings are rare, then your mind becomes a filter that keeps reinforcing that belief. But the moment you begin to change your inner dialogue, something astonishing happens. You start cooperating with the same force that spins the planets and grows forests from tiny seeds. Think about this for a moment. A seed buried in dark soil does not question whether it deserves to become a tree. It does not compare itself with the trees around it. It does not worry about whether there will be enough sunlight tomorrow. It simply follows the intelligence placed within it, and that intelligence guides it upward. The same intelligence exists inside you. It is the presence many traditions call God, Source, Spirit, Divine, Mind. It is the invisible creative field that holds every possibility for your life. And when you align your thinking with that field, the universe begins to orchestrate events that feel almost miraculous. Doors open unexpectedly. People appear at exactly the right moment. Ideas arrive that change the direction of your life. Solutions emerge where problems once seemed permanent. But here is the most important shift you must make. Stop thinking of blessings as something you must chase. Blessings are something you allow. They flow naturally when you release resistance. Resistance is the voice of the ego. The ego says, "I must control everything." The ego says, "I am separate from the divine." The ego says, "I will believe it when I see it." But the soul speaks differently. The soul whispers, "You will see it when you believe it." This is not blind optimism. It is alignment with a deeper truth about the nature of reality. Your thoughts are not small private events happening inside your skull. They are energetic signals interacting with the intelligence of the universe. Every thought you think sends out a frequency. Every belief you hold becomes a magnet for experiences that match it. So when you begin to think thoughts of possibility, gratitude, love, and trust, you are literally tuning your consciousness to the frequency where blessings exist. And the universe responds, not because you begged for it, not because you forced it, but because you became a vibrational match for it. Many people misunderstand what it means when we say that God wants to bless you. They imagine a distant figure in the sky deciding who deserves abundance and who does not. But divine intelligence does not operate through favoritism. It operates through alignment. Just as gravity works the same way for every person on earth, the laws of spiritual manifestation operate for anyone willing to align their consciousness with them. When you release resentment, you make space for peace. When you release fear, you make space for courage. When you release the illusion of separation, you reconnect with the infinite creative power within you. And that reconnection is where miracles begin. I have seen this truth unfold in countless lives. People who spent years believing they were trapped suddenly discover new opportunities that change everything. Individuals who felt broken discover a strength they never knew they had. Situations that once seemed impossible begin to resolve themselves in unexpected ways. And when these blessings arrive, they often feel overwhelming. Not because they came out of nowhere, but because they arrived at the exact moment you finally believed they were possible. There is a beautiful phrase from ancient wisdom that says, "Be still and know." Be still, because in stillness you remember who you really are. You are not the anxious voice in your head constantly replaying the past or worrying about the future. You are the awareness that notices those thoughts. You are the presence that exists before every thought appears. That presence is divine. And when you rest in that awareness, something remarkable happens. You begin to experience life not as a struggle to survive, but as a dance of creation. You realize that the universe is not working against you. It is responding to you. Your inner state becomes the blueprint for your outer world. If your inner world is filled with doubt, the outer world reflects limitation. If your inner world is filled with trust, the outer world begins to reflect opportunity. This is why spiritual awakening often feels like waking up from a long dream. You suddenly see that the obstacles you feared were often projections of your own beliefs. You see that the blessings you longed for were quietly waiting for you to recognize your own divine nature. And when that recognition happens, it can feel as though God is blowing your mind with possibilities you never imagined. But remember this, these blessings are not arriving to make you superior to others. They are arriving to remind you that everyone carries the same divine potential. Your awakening becomes a light that helps others remember their own. When you walk through the world with gratitude in your heart, you elevate the energy of every room you enter. When you choose forgiveness instead of resentment, you free not only yourself, but the invisible bonds that keep suffering alive. When you trust that life is unfolding for your highest good, you become a living example of faith. And faith is a powerful force. Faith is not the absence of uncertainty. Faith is the courage to move forward even when the path is not fully visible. It is the quiet confidence that the same intelligence guiding the stars is also guiding your life. Look at nature for a moment. The ocean does not struggle to create waves. The sun does not struggle to shine. A flower does not struggle to bloom. These expressions of life unfold effortlessly because they follow their nature. Your true nature is divine. Your true nature is creative. Your true nature is abundance. But you have been taught to doubt that nature. You have been taught to identify with fear instead of spirit. And so awakening is not about becoming something new. It is about remembering what you have always been. A channel of divine intelligence. A vessel through which the universe experiences itself. And once you remember that truth, your relationship with life changes forever. You stop asking, why is this happening to me? And you begin asking, what is this moment inviting me to become? Every challenge becomes a teacher. Every setback becomes a redirection. Every blessing becomes a reminder of the infinite support surrounding you. The mind may try to argue with this. The ego may say, but what about the difficulties in the world? Yes, difficulties exist. But even in the midst of difficulty, the divine presence within you remains untouched. Just as the sky remains unchanged behind passing storms, your true self remains whole behind every temporary experience. When you live from that awareness, you discover a kind of freedom that no external circumstance can take away. And from that freedom, blessings flow naturally, because you are no longer chasing happiness. You are expressing it. You are no longer begging life to be kind to you. You are cooperating with the kindness already embedded in the fabric of existence. And this is when the miracles begin to feel almost playful. Life starts surprising you. Opportunities appear that you never planned. Connections form that feel guided by something larger than coincidence. Moments of joy arrive that remind you how generous the universe truly is. And in those moments, you may find yourself smiling quietly and thinking, this is far more beautiful than I ever imagined. Because the divine intelligence that created you has always known the path of your highest expansion. It has always been guiding you through every experience, even the painful ones, especially the painful ones. For it is often through difficulty that we release the illusions that keep us small. It is often through heartbreak that we discover the depth of our compassion. It is often through uncertainty that we learn to trust the invisible. And that trust opens the door to a life that feels guided rather than forced. So if you feel a stirring inside you today, listen to it. If something within you is whispering that your life is about to expand in ways you cannot yet explain, trust that feeling, because the soul recognizes truth before the mind can prove it. Allow yourself to believe that extraordinary blessings are possible. Allow yourself to imagine a future filled with joy, creativity, and purpose, not as a distant dream, but as a natural expression of your divine nature. And remember this above all else. The power that created the universe did not forget about you. It lives within you. It breathes through you. It speaks through your intuition. And when you align your thoughts with that infinite intelligence, you will discover something truly astonishing. The blessings that blow your mind were never outside you. They were waiting for you to remember who you really are. And when you begin to remember who you truly are, something very quiet and very powerful begins to unfold inside you. It does not arrive with fireworks or dramatic announcements. It comes more like the sunrise, gradually illuminating a landscape that was always there but hidden in darkness. You start to notice that the world itself begins responding differently to you. The same streets, the same people, the same circumstances may still exist, yet the energy surrounding your life begins to shift. Where you once saw obstacles, you begin to see invitations. Where you once felt pressure, you begin to feel guidance. Where you once believed you had to force life into shape, you begin to recognize that life itself has always been gently guiding you toward expansion. This is the moment when many people say, something incredible is happening to me. But the deeper truth is that nothing new is being added to your life. Something false is being removed. The illusion of separation. For most of our lives, we have been trained to see ourselves as isolated beings struggling for survival in a vast and indifferent universe. The ego thrives on this story. It feeds on comparison. It measures worth by achievements, possessions, and approval from others. And yet the soul knows something very different. The soul knows that you are not separate from the universe. You are an expression of it. Just as a wave is not separate from the ocean, you are not separate from the infinite field of intelligence that created everything. When a wave rises in the ocean, it may briefly appear to be an individual form. It has shape, motion, identity. But the substance of the wave is still the ocean itself. You are that wave. Your personality, your history, your name, these are the temporary shapes of the wave. But the substance of who you are is divine. And when you truly understand this, not as an intellectual concept, but as a felt experience, fear begins to lose its grip on your life. Because how can a wave fear the ocean that created it? How can a soul fear the intelligence that breathes life into every moment? Fear dissolves when awareness expands. You begin to trust something far greater than your personal plans. You begin to trust the mysterious intelligence that arranges coincidences, that places the right people in your path, that whispers guidance through intuition. Some call this intuition the voice of God. Others call it inner knowing. But whatever name you choose, it is the same quiet wisdom that has been speaking to you your entire life. Think back to moments when you suddenly felt an unexplainable pull toward something. A conversation you almost didn't have. A decision you felt strangely certain about. A path that seemed unclear but felt deeply right. Often those moments become the turning points of our lives. Not because we controlled them, but because we listened. And listening is one of the greatest spiritual practices you can cultivate. In a world that constantly demands your attention, your opinions, your reactions, learning to become still may be the most revolutionary act of all. Stillness reconnects you with the field of infinite intelligence. It is in stillness that inspiration arises. It is in stillness that healing begins. It is in stillness that the mind stops shouting long enough for the soul to speak. And what the soul often says is simple but life-changing. You are safe. You are guided. You are loved. Not loved conditionally. Not loved only when you succeed. Loved simply because you exist. The divine intelligence that created you does not operate through judgment the way the human mind does. It operates through expansion. Every experience you have ever lived, every success, every mistake, every heartbreak has been part of a larger unfolding designed to awaken your awareness. Even the moments you once labeled as failures often become the doorways to your greatest wisdom. Think about the times in your life when things did not go the way you planned. At the time, it may have felt like loss. But later you realize that those moments redirected you towards something far more aligned with who you were meant to become. Life often protects you from paths that do not belong to you. But when the ego is in control, it interprets redirection as rejection. It sees closed doors as punishment. Yet the soul sees something else entirely. The soul sees guidance. The soul understands that the universe sometimes removes what no longer serves your expansion. Not to hurt you, but to prepare you, because the blessings that are meant for you require a version of you that is ready to receive them. This is why personal transformation often precedes extraordinary breakthroughs. Before abundance arrives, your mindset expands. Before purpose becomes clear, your awareness deepens. Before miracles appear, your perception shifts. And that shift is happening inside you right now. Perhaps you feel it as a sense that something new is emerging in your life. Perhaps you feel it as a subtle release of old fears and limiting beliefs. Perhaps you simply feel a quiet curiosity about what is possible for you now. That curiosity is sacred. It is the soul leaning toward growth. When you follow that curiosity with openness instead of doubt, life begins to reveal possibilities that once seemed invisible. New ideas start flowing. New connections appear. New opportunities emerge from places you never expected. It can feel almost magical. But what you are witnessing is not magic in the fantasy sense. It is alignment. When your thoughts, emotions, and intentions begin harmonizing with the creative intelligence of the universe, life becomes fluid. Synchronicities increase. Timing improves. Effort becomes less about struggle and more about inspired action. And suddenly the phrase, "God is about to blow your mind with huge blessings," stops sounding like exaggeration. It begins to feel like a natural outcome of spiritual alignment. But here is the beautiful truth many people overlook. The greatest blessing is not money, success, or recognition. Those things may come, but they are not the ultimate reward. The greatest blessing is awakening. Awakening to the realization that the peace you search for outside yourself has always been within you. Awakening to the understanding that your worth was never dependent on anyone's approval. Awakening to the knowing that your life is part of something infinitely larger and more meaningful than the ego could ever imagine. Once that awakening happens, everything changes. You stop chasing validation. You stop measuring your life against the lives of others. You stop believing the voice that says you are not enough. Because deep inside, you now know the truth. You were never meant to compete for your place in the universe. Your place was already secured the moment you came into existence. You are here as a unique expression of divine creativity. There has never been another you, and there will never be another you again. The universe does not create duplicates. It creates original masterpieces. Your talents, your perspective, your experiences, all of them combine to form a contribution that only you can make. When you honor that uniqueness instead of hiding it, the energy of your life changes dramatically. You begin living authentically. You begin expressing ideas and passions that once felt too vulnerable to share. And something wonderful happens when you do. The right people start finding you. The right opportunities start aligning with you. Because authenticity is magnetic. It resonates with truth. And truth carries an energy that cannot be ignored. You see, the universe is not looking for perfection from you. It is looking for authenticity. Perfection is an illusion created by the ego. Authenticity is the natural state of the soul. When you live authentically, you stop exhausting yourself trying to become someone you are not. Instead, you allow the divine intelligence within you to express itself freely. And that expression is where your true power lives. Think of a musician who finally stops trying to imitate others and begins playing from their own heart. Suddenly, the music becomes alive. Think of a speaker who stops reciting memorized words and begins speaking from genuine passion. Suddenly, the message becomes electrifying. The same principle applies to every area of life. When you align with your authentic self, life responds with energy, opportunity, and creativity. And blessings begin to multiply. Not because you force them to happen, but because you remove the barriers that were blocking them. The ego builds walls. The soul opens doors. The ego clings to control. The soul trusts the unfolding. The ego asks, "What if everything goes wrong?" The soul whispers, "What if everything goes right?" And when you begin living from that whisper rather than the fear of the ego, life becomes an adventure rather than a burden. You wake up each day curious about what miracles might appear. You approach challenges with creativity instead of anxiety. You treat every moment as an opportunity to expand your awareness. And slowly, quietly, almost mysteriously, your life begins to transform. You notice more beauty around you, more kindness, more synchronicity, more unexpected blessings, because your perception has shifted from scarcity to abundance. And abundance is not simply about money. Abundance is the recognition that the universe is endlessly creative. There are more possibilities available to you than your logical mind could ever calculate. Opportunities exist that you cannot yet see. Paths exist that you have not yet imagined. Ideas exist that have not yet entered your awareness. But the moment you align your thoughts with faith, gratitude, and openness, those possibilities begin finding their way to you. The universe loves expansion. It loves growth. It loves the courageous human soul that chooses to rise above fear and step into its divine identity. And that is what you are doing now. You are remembering that you are not a powerless observer of life. You are a co-creator with the intelligence that designed the stars. You are a living expression of divine creativity. And when you truly embrace that identity, something extraordinary happens. Life begins to feel less like a struggle and more like a partnership with the universe. And in that partnership, the blessings that once seemed impossible begin to appear with astonishing grace, not because you chased them, but because you became the person who could receive them. And when they arrive, you will smile quietly and realize something profound. God did not suddenly decide to bless you. God was simply waiting for you to remember who you are. There comes a quiet moment in every life when the soul begins to whisper that the person you have been pretending to be is no longer the person you are meant to become. It is not a loud announcement. It does not arrive with thunder or fireworks. Instead, it shows up as a gentle discomfort inside your spirit, like a seed pressing against the soil, knowing it was never created to remain buried forever. Most people misunderstand that feeling. They think something is wrong with them. They assume they are dissatisfied, restless, or ungrateful. But what is actually happening is far more sacred. Your soul is trying to outgrow the version of yourself that your ego has constructed. You see, the ego loves familiarity. It clings to identities, labels, and stories. It tells you that who you were yesterday must define who you are today. It whispers that you are the sum of your past mistakes, your failures, your disappointments, and your limitations. The ego builds a cage made of memories and then convinces you that the cage is your home. But the soul was never meant to live inside a cage. Your soul is expansive. It is timeless. It is connected to something far greater than the personality you have been wearing, like a costume. The soul does not care about the labels you carry, the approval you seek, or the fears that keep you small. The soul cares only about growth, expansion, and truth. And truth is this: you cannot become the person you are meant to be while remaining loyal to the version of yourself that your fear has created. There is a strange loyalty many people have toward their old identity. They cling to it because it is familiar. They cling to it because others expect it. They cling to it because letting go feels like stepping into the unknown. But spiritual awakening is always an invitation into the unknown. The caterpillar does not become the butterfly by negotiating with its old form. It does not ask permission from the leaf it has been crawling upon. At some mysterious moment in its life, something inside begins to change. The caterpillar dissolves its old body completely. It becomes a kind of living soup inside the cocoon, and from that surrender, wings are formed. Imagine if the caterpillar insisted on remaining a caterpillar because that identity felt safe. Imagine if it said, "But I have always crawled. Flying is not who I am." Nature itself shows us that transformation requires the willingness to release what you have been. The same law exists within your own consciousness. You were never meant to remain the person you were 10 years ago, or even 1 year ago. Life itself is a continual process of becoming. The universe is expanding every second. Galaxies are drifting farther apart. Stars are being born and dying in an endless dance of transformation. Why would you, a conscious being made from the same cosmic intelligence, remain frozen in a single version of yourself? Yet many people do. They stay loyal to old wounds. They replay old stories. They define themselves by experiences that happened long ago. They allow the past to become a script that dictates the future. But the past is nothing more than a collection of memories stored in the mind. Your soul lives somewhere else entirely. Your soul lives in the present moment. Right now, in this very moment, there is an entirely new version of you waiting to be born. A wiser version, a freer version, a version that is no longer controlled by fear, resentment, or limitation. But that version cannot emerge while you continue to identify with the person you used to be. This is where courage enters the spiritual journey. Outgrowing the old version of yourself is not always comfortable. In fact, it can feel like a kind of death, because in a way, it is. The ego experiences transformation as loss. The ego mourns the identities it once used for protection. It resists change because it believes survival depends on remaining the same. But the soul understands something deeper. The soul understands that every ending is actually a doorway. When a tree sheds its leaves in autumn, it is not dying. It is preparing for renewal. When the tide pulls away from the shore, it is not abandoning the ocean. It is simply part of a greater rhythm. Your life follows that same rhythm. There are seasons when certain versions of you must fall away. The version of you that sought validation from others. The version of you that believed you were not enough. The version of you that stayed silent to keep the peace. The version of you that carried anger like a shield. These identities may have once served a purpose. They may have protected you during difficult moments, but they were never meant to become permanent. Growth requires release, and release begins with awareness. The moment you realize that you are not your ego, something profound begins to happen. You start observing your thoughts rather than being controlled by them. You start recognizing that the voice inside your head is not your true self. Your true self is the silent awareness behind that voice. That awareness is connected to the infinite intelligence that created the stars. It is calm, it is wise, it is loving, and it has been patiently waiting for you to remember who you truly are. The old version of you was built from conditioning, from expectations placed upon you by parents, teachers, society, culture, and experience. It is a collection of beliefs that were repeated so often that they began to feel like truth. But beliefs are not reality. They are simply thoughts you have practiced for a long time. And the moment you begin questioning those thoughts, the walls of the old identity begin to crack. You start to see that many of the limitations you believed were permanent were actually illusions. You begin to notice that fear loses its power when you stop feeding it. You begin to notice that resentment dissolves when you refuse to carry it. You begin to notice that peace appears when you stop arguing with the present moment. Transformation does not happen through force. It happens through awareness. When you become aware of the patterns that keep you small, you no longer have to obey them. Imagine waking up each morning with a new understanding of who you are. Not the role you play in society, not the personality shaped by past experiences, but the eternal being that exists beneath all of that. A being made from the same intelligence that guides planets through space. A being capable of love, creativity, compassion, and wisdom beyond measure. When you begin identifying with that deeper self, the old version of you starts to feel too small. The fears that once controlled you begin to look like shadows. The opinions of others begin to lose their authority. The past begins to loosen its grip, and something beautiful starts to emerge. Freedom. True freedom does not come from controlling the world around you. It comes from realizing that you are not defined by it. The old version of you believed happiness was something to chase. The awakened version of you realizes happiness is something you allow. The old version of you believed love had to be earned. The awakened version of you realizes love is your natural state. The old version of you believed you were separate from life. The awakened version of you realizes you are life expressing itself in human form. And once you understand that, everything changes. You stop trying to prove your worth. You stop comparing yourself to others. You stop holding on to pain as evidence of your identity. Instead, you begin living from a place of quiet confidence. You become less interested in being right and more interested in being peaceful. You become less interested in controlling outcomes and more interested in trusting the flow of life. You become less interested in defending your ego and more interested in expanding your soul. Outgrowing the old version of yourself is not about rejecting your past. It is about honoring it without allowing it to imprison you. Your past was a classroom, not a life sentence. Every experience you have ever had was preparing you to awaken to something greater. The mistakes were teachers. The struggles were catalysts. The disappointments were invitations to grow. Nothing was wasted. But wisdom arrives when you realize that you are not required to carry every lesson forever. Some lessons are meant to be released once they are understood. Imagine carrying a backpack filled with stones throughout your life. Each stone represents a resentment, a regret, or a limiting belief. At some point, you must ask yourself whether those stones still serve you. Most people continue carrying them simply because they have become accustomed to the weight. But the moment you put the backpack down, something remarkable happens. You remember how light you are meant to feel. You remember that peace was never missing. It was simply buried beneath everything you were holding on to. The old version of you survives through attachment. The awakened version of you thrives through surrender. Surrender does not mean giving up. It means letting go of the illusion that you must control everything in order to feel safe. When you surrender to the intelligence of life, you begin trusting that growth is unfolding exactly as it should. You begin trusting that every experience is guiding you closer to your highest self. You begin trusting that the universe is not working against you, but through you. And in that trust, transformation becomes natural. You stop forcing life to conform to your expectations. Instead, you allow yourself to evolve. You allow yourself to become someone new, someone wiser, someone calmer, someone more connected to the divine presence that lives within you. The most powerful decision you can ever make is to stop defending the version of yourself that no longer serves your soul. You are not obligated to remain the person you were yesterday. You are not required to repeat the same emotional patterns. You are not destined to carry the same fears forever. You have the ability, in this very moment, to choose a new identity, not one based on ego, but one rooted in awareness. And when you make that choice, something extraordinary begins to unfold. The universe begins meeting you at that new level of consciousness. Opportunities appear that match your new vibration. People enter your life who resonate with your growth. Old conflicts dissolve because you no longer participate in them. It is not magic. It is alignment. Life reflects the energy you embody. When you embody peace, you attract peaceful experiences. When you embody love, you attract loving relationships. When you embody freedom, you attract possibilities that once seemed impossible. But it all begins with one courageous step, the willingness to outgrow the old version of yourself, the willingness to release the identities that once defined you, the willingness to step into the unknown with faith instead of fear. Because deep within your being, there is a quiet knowing, a knowing that you are far more powerful, far more loving, and far more infinite than you have ever been taught to believe. That knowing is your soul, and it has been guiding you your entire life. Every moment of discomfort, every desire for change, every longing for something greater has been the soul's way of saying, you are ready, ready to expand, ready to awaken, ready to become the highest version of yourself. So do not fear the shedding of your old identity. Celebrate it, because every layer you release reveals something extraordinary beneath it. Your true self, a self that is not bound by fear, a self that is not limited by the past, a self that is connected to the infinite intelligence of the universe. And once you begin living from that place, you will realize something beautiful. You never truly lost yourself. You are simply growing beyond who you used to be. And as you continue along this quiet unfolding of your own awakening, something subtle begins to shift in the way you look at your life. You begin to notice that the old version of you was never truly the enemy. It was simply a stage in your evolution, a necessary form that carried you to this moment. Just as the shell protects the growing life within an egg, the identities you once held protected you when you were not yet ready to see beyond them. The fear, the striving, the need for approval, the endless attempts to prove your worth, these were not failures of your character. They were expressions of a consciousness that had not yet remembered its divine origin. And that remembering is the real transformation. Because the moment you begin to remember who you truly are, the old story begins to dissolve on its own. Not through struggle, not through force, but through understanding. Imagine standing in a dark room that you have lived in your entire life. The furniture of that room represents the habits, beliefs, and identities you have always known. You move carefully through that room because you are afraid of bumping into something. You memorize where everything is. You become attached to the arrangement because it feels familiar. But then, one day, someone opens a window and sunlight pours in. Suddenly, you realize the room was never as large as you thought. The furniture was never as permanent as it seemed. The shadows that once frightened you were simply shapes created by darkness. The light did not fight the darkness. It simply appeared, and the darkness vanished. This is what happens when awareness enters your life. The old version of you begins dissolving not because you are trying to destroy it, but because the truth has become brighter than the illusion. You start noticing how many of your fears were inherited from voices that were never truly yours. Parents who passed along their anxieties. Teachers who unknowingly limited your imagination. A culture that taught you to measure your worth by productivity, appearance, or success. All of those voices helped shape the version of yourself you once believed was real. But your soul has never belonged to those voices. Your soul belongs to the infinite. It belongs to the same creative intelligence that orchestrates the seasons, guides the migration of birds, and causes flowers to bloom without ever asking permission. You are not separate from that intelligence. You are an expression of it. And when you begin living from that understanding, you stop asking the world for validation. You stop seeking permission to become who you truly are. You stop shrinking yourself to make others comfortable. Instead, you begin honoring the quiet guidance within you. That guidance does not shout. It whispers. It whispers when you feel called to leave environments that drain your spirit. It whispers when you feel inspired to pursue something that ignites your heart. It whispers when you recognize that the life you have been living no longer reflects the truth of who you are becoming. Many people ignore that whisper because the ego fears change. The ego says, stay where you are, this is safe. This is predictable. But the soul is not interested in safety. The soul is interested in growth. And growth always requires movement. Think of a river as it flows through a landscape. It does not remain frozen in one shape. It bends, curves, widens, narrows, and changes direction depending on the terrain. Yet throughout all those changes, it never stops being a river. Your identity is the same. The old version of you was simply a bend in the river, a moment in the journey. But the flow of your being continues far beyond it. And when you truly embrace that flow, life begins to feel lighter. You stop clinging so tightly to how things must be. You stop defining yourself by titles and roles. You stop worrying about whether others understand your transformation. Because transformation is not a performance. It is an inner realization. You do not need the world to applaud your growth. The quiet peace you feel inside is enough. This peace begins to appear when you realize that you are not here to maintain an identity. You are here to evolve. Evolution is the nature of life. Seeds evolve into trees. Children evolve into adults. Stars evolve into entirely new galaxies over billions of years. Why would consciousness, the most powerful force in the universe, remain stagnant? You are meant to expand. You are meant to awaken to deeper layers of understanding. You are meant to outgrow the person you once believed you had to be. And when you allow that process to unfold, something remarkable begins happening in your relationships, your work, and your experience of the world. You start responding rather than reacting. Where the old version of you might have responded with anger, the awakened version pauses and chooses compassion. Where the old version might have clung to resentment, the awakened version understands that holding on to pain only imprisons the one who carries it. Where the old version might have felt threatened by change, the awakened version welcomes it as evidence that life is still moving. This is the quiet power of inner growth. It does not demand attention. It does not seek recognition, but it transforms everything it touches. People around you begin noticing something different about your presence. They may not be able to explain it, but they feel calmer when they are near you. They feel less judged. They feel more accepted. This happens because when you outgrow your ego, you stop trying to control the world around you. You begin allowing others to be exactly where they are in their own journey. You realize that everyone is evolving at their own pace. Just as you once lived inside the old version of yourself, others are still living inside theirs. And instead of criticizing them for it, you begin meeting them with understanding. Compassion becomes natural. Forgiveness becomes easier. Not because you are forcing yourself to be spiritual, but because you are remembering your connection to the same universal source that lives within them. And that realization dissolves the illusion of separation. You begin seeing humanity differently. You begin recognizing that beneath every personality, every story, every struggle, there is the same divine spark trying to awaken. Some people are simply further along that path of remembering. And now, you are one of them. Not because you are superior, but because you have chosen awareness over fear. You have chosen growth over stagnation. You have chosen to step beyond the old version of yourself. And that choice changes everything. It changes the energy you bring into each moment. It changes the way you interpret challenges. It changes the way you see your own potential. You begin understanding that life is not happening to you. Life is happening through you. Every experience becomes an opportunity to express the higher consciousness that is emerging within you. And slowly, almost without noticing it, you become someone entirely new. Not someone pretending to be spiritual, not someone performing wisdom, but someone who lives from a deeper understanding of reality, someone who recognizes that peace is not found in controlling the world, but in aligning with the truth of your own being. And the truth is this: you were never meant to remain the same. The universe itself is in constant transformation, and you are a living extension of that universe. So allow the old identities to fall away. Allow the beliefs that once defined you to soften and dissolve. Allow yourself to grow beyond the limitations you once accepted. Because the person you are becoming is not a stranger. It is the truest expression of who you have always been. The soul within you has known this all along. It has been guiding you quietly, patiently, lovingly. And every step you take beyond the old version of yourself is not a loss. It is a return to your authentic nature, a return to your infinite potential, a return to the timeless truth that has always lived within you. You are not a fixed identity. You are a living, expanding expression of the divine. And the moment you fully embrace that truth, you will no longer fear change. You will welcome it, because you will finally understand that every transformation is simply the universe inviting you to become more of who you truly are.